Hello, and welcome to the Knox County Public Library's Tutor Team. My name is Mr. Frederick, and today I will be tutoring grades 4 and 5 in English Language Arts. Our topic today is character traits. The standards that we will be covering are describing two or more characters in a text and using details from the text to help back up your answer. So, what is a character trait? Well, a character trait is not a word that describes a character's physical appearance. So, for example, we have tall, or young, or freckled. You could say blue-eyed, or blonde-haired, or brown-haired. All those things describe that character's outside a physical appearance. And we want to talk more about the inside, their personality. Character trait is not a word that describes how a character is feeling only at like one point in time, like happy or tired or scared or surprised. Those things really don't talk about how you are most of the time. It's just like maybe once a day or once every couple days. So which of these words are character traits? We have excited, angry, honest, selfish, skinny, and creative. Now, one thing we talked about earlier is that a character trait does not describe the outside of a person or a character in the story, because characters can be animals, they can be people, things like that. Well, we already see one that talks about their physical appearance, and that's skinny. So we can take skinny out of this group because that is not going to be a character trait. Now, excited. Do you feel excited like at one point in time, or are you constantly excited every day, all day long? Well, I am never excited all day long. So to me, that is not a character trait. Angry. Are you angry all day long, all the time? Nope, that's just something that happens every once in a while. So that's also not a character trait. Now, honest. Are you honest most of the time? Or does that just happen every once in a while? The most people that I know are usually pretty honest about something. They may lie every once in a while, but most of the time they're pretty honest. They tell the truth. So honest is a character trait. It can describe that character and how they are. Selfish. Have you met people that are kind of greedy and they don't like to share, and that's just kind of how they are most of the time? That's someone that's being like a selfish person. So to me, selfish is a character trait. Creative. Do you know somebody that's really good at art or really good at building things? They have great ideas. That means they're creative. And that's not something that just happens every once in a while. Those kind of people are creative all the time. So that's another example of a character trait. Let's look at this short little story. It says, in the last chapter, Bella almost started crying when Evan told her about how he had found an injured bird on the sidewalk. Now in this chapter, Bella just told her friend that she was sorry that her grandma died. I can infer, remember we talked about inferring, it's when you take what you know and you take what you read and you come up with a kind of a good guess, that I can infer that Bella is a very compassionate person. Now, is there examples in the text that kind of help back that up? And you know what compassionate means? You're kind of caring about people, that you feel how they're feeling, you get upset about things. Now, if we go back, she started crying when Evan told her about how he had found an injured bird. So she kind of felt sorry for the bird. And she also felt sorry whenever her friend's grandma passed away. She felt bad for her grandma passing, and she also probably felt bad for how her friend was hurting at the time. So there's evidence in the story to back up how she's caring. She's compassionate. So that's how we find a character trait. Now, character traits are based on these four things. They're based on feelings. They're based on actions, things that you do. Dialogue, which means that when you're talking, like when one character's talking to another character in a story, that's dialogue. You may have the little quotation marks, and sometimes your teacher may call them talking marks in there, and that means they're having a conversation back and forth. And your thoughts. Like, what are you thinking right now on the situation that's happening? Those four things are how you can kind of find a character trait about who you're reading in the story. Now, a note about character traits. There are often synonyms. Remember, a synonym is a word that means about the same thing as another word for character trait words. Can you name synonyms for the following character traits? We have brave. Brave means you're not afraid of anything. That you'll stand in a situation and try to help someone, or you're just not afraid of something that everybody else may be afraid of. So a synonym for brave, to me, would be courageous, because you have that courage to go face your fears. Kind. Another word that means about the same thing as kind is Someone that might be nice. Bossy. Now, bossy could be a tricky one. Um, Bossy means, you're someone that likes to tell people what to do. So you might be considered overbearing, which means you kind of step in a situation and you just take over and you start delegating things and telling people what they can do or can't do. That's being bossy. Honest. Honest means you're truthful. That's another word for it. You don't tell lies. So truthful could be another word for honest, and it could also be a character trait. Now, let's talk about feelings. If a character consistently, which means it happens quite a bit, feels a certain way, it can sometimes point to a noticeable character trait. For example, Matt was scared to walk through the cemetery a few minutes ago, and now he is frightened by a dog growling. A character trait I can infer is, well, let's look at the clues in the story. We know he was scared to walk through the cemetery. Now he's frightened by a dog growling. So I would say he's someone that's kind of fearful. He's afraid of a lot of things. So the character trait I would see here is fearful. Now, if a character consistently acts a certain way, it can point to a noticeable character trait. Cassie's grandparents gave her money for her birthday. Cassie decided that the families at the crisis shelter needed food more than she needed a new toy. So she donated her money to the crisis shelter. A character trait I can infer is, well, let's look at the clues in the story. We know she got money for her birthday, that she gave that money up to the families at the crisis shelter because they needed food more than she needed a new toy. So I would say that she could be considered caring because of her actions. She cared more about those people that were at the shelter that needed help than she did about herself and the money that she received. Now, dialogue. That's where we said that that's when characters are talking back and forth. Dialogue refers to the things the character says. Watch for patterns in what the character says to others. So, even though Madeline was already talking, Sadie interrupted her to tell her classmates the story of what happened to her over the weekend. Later, she told Bree that her sweater looked old and ugly. The character trait I can infer is, so we know that she interrupted the girl who was talking first. We know that she told Bree that her sweater looked old and ugly. So she's not being a very nice person. So I would say that based on the clues in the story, that Sadie was an unkind person. She interrupted, she put people down, so she's unkind. Or you could say rude. Thoughts. Remember, thoughts are what a character is thinking. Watch for patterns in what the character thinks. So, Brian decided that he wanted to earn money during his summer vacation. He determined that he could mow 4 lawns a day. He hung a poster in his neighborhood, and soon his phone was ringing nonstop. The character trait I can infer is, so he wanted to earn some money, right? That he hung a poster in his neighborhood, and soon his phone was ringing nonstop. I would think that Brian could be somebody that you could say like a hard worker, because he went out and put signs up to get some work, and now his phone's ringing off the hook, and he's working several different houses to mow the lawn. So he's kind of a hard-working person. Oops. Now, what do these character trait words mean? Sly. A person that is sly is kind of sneaky. They like to try to do things and get away with it. They're sly. Foolish. If you make some wrong choices and don't think it through, and then you have consequences, you could say you're kind of foolish. You're doing something, and that's probably not a really smart idea. Diligent. Diligent is another word for kind of like a hard. I don't know if I would say a hard worker or not, but diligent means that you are working in a way that kind of shows that you are conscientious, which means you're thinking about your work and your duties, and you're doing them really well. And we know what lazy means. Lazy is kind of the opposite of that. They are someone that's not a hard worker. They don't really put a lot of effort into their job. Now, which character traits apply to the following passage? Jesse and Andrew were picking strawberries that their parents would sell at the farmer's market the next morning. It's hot out here. Let's take another break, suggested Andrew. We just took a break 5 minutes ago, replied Jessie. She continued to move down the row, picking ripe strawberries from each plant. I think we should keep working and just get this done. If we take too many breaks, it is really going to get hot out here. Andrew shrugged. Suit yourself. I am going to sit under the shade of that tree over there. 5 minutes later, Jessie glanced at her brother. His flat was nearly empty because he had been feasting on the few strawberries that he had already picked. She shook her head in disgust. He is going to regret this in an hour when I have finished my rows and he is still out here working in the heat. What would you say about Jessie? Would she be sly, which would mean she's kind of sneaky? Would she be foolish, which means she just isn't thinking very clearly? Would she be diligent, which means she's paying a lot of attention to her job and trying to do a good job at it? Or lazy, which means she's not trying at all? Well, if I'm thinking about this, she's not being sneaky. That's just not what she's doing. She's not being lazy because she's still working while her brother is off laying under a tree and eating. She's not being foolish because she's not kind of thinking outside the box and doing something kind of not a very good decision or being kind of just not smart about things. But she is thinking a lot about her job and trying to get it done. So I would say that she is diligent. Now, next story. Yes, I caught my dinner, said the cat. Let me go now, screamed the mouse. No way! You will make a tasty meal for me, answered the cat, his mouth already watering. How about we make a deal, suggested the mouse. If you let me go, I will lead you to the mouse hideout. Then, instead of eating one little old scrawny mouse today, you will be able to dine on a mouse each day for the next month. He makes a good point, thought the cat. It would be better to know where I could find dinner for the next 30 days. Okay, it's a deal. Lead me to the mouse hideout. As soon as the cat released his grip on the mouse jumped to the ground and went through the hole in the wall. Wait a second. What about our deal? Called the cat. There was no reply. The mouse had already vanished. The cat is sly, which remember we said he's kind of sneaky. Foolish, which means he's not very smart, he's not thinking clearly. Diligent, which is a hard worker, or lazy who doesn't work hard at all. So the cat is what? Well, he's kind of gullible, which means he believes everything he hears. And the mouse kind of tricked him. So he wasn't thinking very clearly or very smart. So I would say that the cat is foolish. What do these character trait words mean? We have arrogant, bossy, optimistic, or pessimistic. Well, if you're arrogant, you kind of think you're a little bit better than everybody else. Bossy means you like to tell people what to do. Optimistic means you're always thinking on the positive. You're always thinking that things are going to go well. And pessimistic means you're always looking like down on things. You always see the bad. You never see the good. So let's see what stories we have here. It was yet another rainy day, and Mrs. Hawthorne's students were having an indoor recess. What are you guys doing? Linda asked, peering at the papers in front of Amber and Valerie. Amber glanced helplessly at Valerie. She didn't want to answer, but she also knew that she couldn't be dishonest. We are just making some name tags to wear for a Reader's Theater performance tomorrow. Cool. May I help? Well, we don't like it when you start telling us what we need to do, said Valerie. I promise I won't do that this time, vowed Linda. Amber moved her papers to make room at the table for Linda. Linda sat down. She glanced at Valerie's paper. Valerie, I'm not telling you that you have to do this, but I really think you should add a border to the name tag. And Amber, that scribble looks horrible. Maybe you should start over. So, what would you say about Linda? Is she arrogant? Is she bossy? Is she optimistic? Or is she pessimistic? Now, if we go back and look at the clues in the story, we can see where the other students have told her, when you start telling us what to do. That's kind of a clue. Do you remember what words at the top shows someone that likes to tell people what to do? I do. It's bossy. Linda is bossy. You look at our next story. I looked at your math exit tickets yesterday after school, announced Mrs. Pearson at the beginning of math class. And it looks like the majority of you are still unsure of how to multiply three-digit numbers. Therefore, we are going to review the process today. Alexander groaned. I might as well get comfortable and take a little nap. This is easy for me. I don't need a day to review. Suddenly, he felt a tap on his shoulder. He opened his eyes and looked up at Mrs. Pearson. Alexander, I expect you to follow along with the rest of the class, said the teacher. Mrs. Pearson, I learned how to do this 2 years ago. Believe me, I know what I'm doing. Really? You might be surprised to know, then, that you didn't get all of the problems correct on our exit ticket yesterday, replied Mrs. Pearson. Now, Alexander is, remember, optimistic means you think always on the good. Pessimistic means you think on the bad. We've already done bossy, so we can take that one out. Remember what arrogant meant? Arrogant meant you just thought you were a little better than everybody else. And which one of those do you think fits what we were talking about? Well, Alexander, if you look in there, thought he didn't need any. He was just going to sit back and not do anything. He already knew how to do this 2 years ago, and then we found out he was wrong. So I would classify him as arrogant because he thinks he knows it all and he just thinks he's better. Now our next story. Which character traits apply to the following passage? Can you believe our luck? Trevor asked Juan as they were walking to the baseball practice after school. We're stuck with Mrs. Heron next year. Yeah, but maybe it won't be that bad, Juan replied. Didn't you hear what my brother told us yesterday? He said it was the worst year of his life and that she never cut him any slack, Trevor reminded Juan. No offense, Trevor, but we're not like your brother. I can almost guarantee that Jared caused problems for himself. I think we'll be fine next year in Mrs. Heron's class. Yeah, that's another issue, but Mrs. Heron is going to find out that I'm Jared Hinkle's brother and have it out for me from the day number one, groaned Trevor. Come on, Trev. You don't think that way. It's just going to ruin your summer. Think positive, said Juan. So, we have two left. We have optimistic and pessimistic. Remember, optimistic means that you're always thinking about the good. Pessimistic is always thinking about the bad. Now, we see Juan at the end of the story kind of cheering him on, trying to get him to think about the positive. So I think that Juan is optimistic, which means that Trevor is probably pessimistic. If you think back in the story, he already thinks it's going to be a horrible year next year, and it's not even time for school to start yet. So Trevor is definitely a pessimistic character. Now, what do these word traits mean? We have determined, which means we have selfish, we have reliable, and irresponsible. Someone that is determined means they're not going to give up. They're going to keep working until they get it done. Selfish means that you're only thinking about yourself. Reliable means it's someone you can count on. Irresponsible means you may not care that much. You don't turn your work in on time. You may promise you're going to go and do something with someone and then not show up. You're just being irresponsible. So let's look at our first story. Chloe spotted Evelyn and Sophie walking on the sidewalk ahead of her and sprinted to catch up. I am so excited about tonight, aren't you, Sophie? She asked, gasping for breath. Yeah. Sophie paused, hoping she could think of something to say that might cover the fact that Evelyn was not invited to Chloe's slumber party. I'm always excited about Fridays because it's the beginning of the weekend. Chloe seemed clueless as to what Sophie was trying to do. But this isn't just any ordinary weekend. I'm having my slumber party tonight, and we're just going to stay up late watching movies and then get pedicures tomorrow morning before everyone goes home. Sophie glanced at Evelyn, who looked crestfallen. Her heart sank to her stomach. She hated seeing her friend feel so dejected. Is there anything I can say to make Evelyn feel better? So, Chloe is what? Considerate, insensitive, stubborn, or brave. Now, Considerate means they're thinking of others. Insensitive means that they don't really see what they're doing to people, that they don't really care if they're making someone feel bad. Stubborn, which means they just won't do what someone asks them to do. They're like, they say stubborn as a mule because sometimes you can't get a mule to move or do what you want it to do. And then brave means you're not afraid. Think about that. Which one of those describe Chloe, who's having the slumber party, talking about it in front of Evelyn, even though Evelyn can't go? I would say that she's being insensitive. She's not thinking about how she's making Evelyn feel. She's just talking about how much fun her party's going to be. The three friends gazed up at the huge water slide. From where they were standing, it looked like you sat on the slide, crossed your legs, placed your arms across your chest, leaned back, and pushed yourself over the edge into a nearly 90-degree free fall. Who's going first? Blake asked. Not me, Jordan immediately responded. I don't know if I'll ever go on that thing. Look, it doesn't even have a line of people waiting to cross it or to go on it. There's a reason for that. I'm not scared. I'll go on it first, Chad said as he confidently started toward the steps. You're insane, Jordan called after him. So, Chad is considerate, insensitive, stubborn, or brave. Now, when we think about the story and we look at the clues, Jordan goes, I don't know if I'll ever go on that thing. Look, it doesn't even have a line, and there's a reason for that. I'm not scared. I'll go on it first, Chad said. So, to me, Chad is brave. Justin, I expect you to have our driveway and sidewalks cleared of snow when I get home from work tonight, instructed Dad. I have to do it all by myself? Justin whined. Doesn't Kara have to help me? Kara folded 3 loads of laundry by herself yesterday. It won't kill you to shovel the driveway. We're only supposed to get 1 inch of snow, Dad answered. 9 hours later, Justin was outside struggling to shovel the 14 inches of snow that had fallen during the day, surprising everyone. Kara saw her brother struggling and went outside to help him. Go back inside, Kara. Dad said that I had to do this myself, said Justin. Justin, you know that Dad wouldn't expect you to shovel 14 inches of wet snow by yourself. I was planning on going to use the snowblower to clear it off the way when he gets home. When Dad told you to do the driveway by yourself, he thought we were only going to get 1 inch of snow. Kara tried to help her brother. I'm shoveling the entire driveway, repeated Justin. So what is he being? His sister keeps trying to help him. Is he being brave? Is he being stubborn, insensitive, or considerate? To me, he's being a stubborn person because he wouldn't accept the help from his sister. When his dad was really only expecting there to be 1 inch of snow, and there's a lot more of that. I don't think his dad would have really wanted him to have to work that hard and get everything done. Well, I hope you learned a little more about character traits and how to find character traits. This will conclude our lesson today. If you want to watch this video again or watch our other Tutor Team videos, please go to the Knox County Tutor Team on YouTube. Thank you.